Every time Marvel releases a new movie theatrically, there's always people out there defending it by saying if it makes more money at the global box office compared to its reported budget, that means the movie's profitable for the studio. And that's not necessarily how it works. Yeah, there are some movies out there that have reached profitability, but the majority of Marvel releases the last couple of years have actually failed to reach that mark at the global box office and had to resort to other means in order to make their money back for it. But even then, the movies that have actually reached that profitability mark are a far cry from where Marvel used to be back in its heyday. And now we have this new reporting out there that pretty much confirms what everyone was thinking about the decline of the MCU. But before we get into all that, if you're new to the channel here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, leave a comment and hit the like button because it helps me out. Disney Marvel movies are losing $619 million each in takings at box office, Forbes report finds. So you heard that right, $619 million each in takings that they're losing. Now, that's not necessarily to say that they're losing $619 million when compared to its production budget, and I'll get more on that in a moment. But first, let's continue on with this article from That Park Place. Disney's Marvel Studios, once the crown jewel of Hollywood's box office dominance, is now bleeding money on a scale that even Iron Man couldn't patch up. A new report from Forbes journalist Caroline Reed reveals that the company has lost an average of $619 million in takings on each Marvel film over the past 2 years, a stunning reversal from the MCU's billion-dollar glory days. And then this talks about the glory days of the MCU between 2015 and 2020. That was around the Phase 3 timeframe that capped off with Avengers Endgame, or at least that was the high point of it, which brought in $2.8 billion globally. And then the final movie in that phase was Spider-Man, and I believe that still made over $1 billion. I think like 1.3, 1.4. I can't remember exactly, but it was still a massive hit. But since then, everything in the MCU has been kind of on a decline, and the article kind of goes into analyze why that could be the case. So Reed traces Marvel's decline to several self-inflicted wounds. Lockdown timing. The first film back in theaters was Black Widow, a prequel for a character already dead, robbing the story of tension or stakes. Not to mention it had a simultaneous release on streaming, which hurt the box office potential for that movie. Confusing continuity. Eternals followed with what Reed calls an implausible premise, alienated audiences who are already hesitant to return to theaters. Streaming overload. Disney flooded Disney Plus with Marvel series, then tied them to the films. Once fans missed one show, they worried they'd be lost on the next movie, leading to a vicious cycle of disengagement. And that was that's part of the hubris of Marvel, because back in the early days of the MCU, they were kind of playing it safe. And then after Avengers, they started to take a little bit more chance. Guardians of the Galaxy was taking a risk for them because that was more of an obscure characters from a team that wasn't as prominent as some of the other characters that they've made movies about before that. And people still loved it because at that point, Marvel built up a lot of goodwill with audiences. So Marvel's thinking like, okay, well, we can throw something out there and see if audiences like this. And people are watching it because they're like, well, this is leading up to the next thing. We want to stay up to date with all the Marvel stuff. So it was a shared brand, and that's really helped prop up some of their more obscure characters. And we saw that in recent years. But since the events of Avengers Endgame, they've thrown so much stuff out there. Yeah, people have been getting lost on it because there was just too much to keep up with. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't. And now in recent years, we're seeing that unless it's a character that people actually want to watch a movie about, they're just choosing not to watch it anymore. Shift to younger demos. Marvel leaned towards teen and child heroes, but kids flocked to movies like Super Mario Brothers instead, while adults, the MCU's original backbone, lost interest. And that could just be a result of people growing up and having different priorities. But I think there's also some of that too, where they stopped catering to their key audience and started looking for another one, which is never a good thing, basically in the middle of a franchise like this. On top of that, Marvel embrace of divisive cultural messaging only deepened the problem. Instead of doubling down on beloved proven heroes, Disney shifted its focus towards female-centric storylines and B-list characters that lacked audience connection of Iron Man, Captain America, or Thor. The funny thing about this is Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor were some of their more B-list characters prior to the MCU, and that's why Marvel Studios actually had the film rights to them, because back in the 90s when Marvel Comics was suffering, they started selling off the film rights to their more popular characters. That's why Sony has Spider-Man, why Fox had X-Men. The ones that they actually maintained the rights for were basically the ones that other movie studios didn't care about, which is why they started the MCU with these characters. They were side characters or B characters that people didn't care about, but Marvel Studios made them into household names, and now they're on the A list of to most people out there. And that's something, like I said previously, Marvel was able to do in the MCU, but with all the stuff that they've thrown out there, they pretty much watered it down. So now it's kind of gone back to how things used to be, where people are only going to watch a movie if it's based around characters that are proven, as opposed to people willing to go watch a Marvel movie because it's the next Marvel movie. Jumping back to this, embracing divisive cultural messaging. I mean, that's something that's been pretty obvious. They've even stated that was their goal. Kevin Feige said he wants to make more female Marvel characters and wants to bring in a girl audience to that. And I don't have a problem necessarily on the surface of trying to expand your target demographic, but the problem is they did it at the cost of their existing demographics, because Marvel was under the impression that the male audience was locked in for them and they're going to watch anything Marvel related if it's Marvel related. So they're like, okay, well, now we can try to pander to a different demographic in order to try to bring more women into theaters to watch our movies, because they're lacking compared to the male demographics who watch their movies. Come to find out, that really didn't work out for them. And not only did it alienate the existing males who watched their movies, but the females who actually liked Marvel movies were also alienated, because now they've changed the movies from what they previously liked into something different, and all in the quest of trying to pander to an audience who was never going to watch their movies to begin with, because the females who weren't already on board prior to this shift were people who were just not interested in watching comic book movies, and all the girl power in the world isn't going to be enough to bring them to theaters to watch your movies. The real kicker comes from the financial math. Reed explains that Disney's only takes home about 50% of the global box office grosses. That's kind of a high estimate. It's 50% or roughly that domestically. Internationally, it could be a little bit less, but I think as just kind of a rule of thumb, you just figure the studio gets around 50% of what the global box office is. A standard cut known in Hollywood as the rental fee. That means box office headlines don't reflect the studio's actual intake. So when you see people on social media saying like, oh, a movie made more like $300 million on a $200 million budget, that doesn't mean the movie actually reached profitability. It still has a far way to go in order to actually hit that mark. Thunderbolts grossed $382.4 million worldwide. Disney's share was only about $191 million. So far less than the production and marketing costs combined. The Fantastic Four First Steps made $507.8 million, which translates into about $254 million for Disney. Again, below its ballooning $250+ million production budget. Some people might say that that means that the movie was profitable, because 254 with the $250 million budget, that's profitability. But again, the production budget is something that's important to take into consideration. They usually don't release what that is. As kind of a rule of thumb, you can figure it's whatever half of the budget is, you can tack that on as a production budget. So if it's a $250 million movie, then the production budget is probably $125 million. So when you double those figures, it's $375 million that they spent on this movie. So it's around $750 million, or when you double it, is what they need to make in order to reach profitability. So $507.8 million is pretty far removed from that. With budgets climbing after Endgame and audiences shrinking, the shortfall has become staggering. As Reed summarized, over the past 2 years, Disney's Marvel division has lost an average of $619 million in takings per film. And where they're getting that number here, I got that Forbes article pulled up, is you just look at what they're saying is the average gross of a Marvel movies in each individual phase. So phase 3, you can see that was the peak where they're averaging $1.2 billion per film, or $1.229 billion per film. And then you've seen it's kind of been on a decline since then. Phase 4, which started with Black Widow and ended with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, averaged around $815.9 million per film. And now the phase 5, $610 million per film. And this recent phase, which is just Fantastic Four First Step so far, is $507 million per film. So when you take all that into consideration, it's not necessarily saying each movie is losing $619 million. It's saying it has that much less than what Marvel used to be back at its peak. Now, what does this mean for the future of the MCU? It's talking about Avengers Doomsday in the article, because with how much they're spending on this movie, it's expected this is going to be one of the most expensive movies ever made. They're probably spending nearly $250 million, so around the entire production budget of Fantastic Four, just on the contracts for the various actors involved with it. I mean, you see all the marketing for this movie, how much of all these different characters and actors that are being in it. That's not cheap for them. So they're spending $250 million on the movie before they shoot anything. And then when you factor in, it's probably going to be another $350 million for the movie itself, for the production of it. That means this movie probably needs to make, once you factor in the marketing costs, nearly $2 billion in order to just break even at the global box office. And while it could be successful and hit that $1 billion mark, $2 billion is a pretty tall order. I mean, that's what Avengers Infinity War hit. And that was at the peak of the MCU when everyone was watching anything Marvel related. And we've seen, obviously, in recent years, even movies that are well received like Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four isn't enough to bring back audiences because the audience just isn't there for that. Now, what does this mean for the future of the MCU? It's looking like, if it says in this article, if Avengers Doomsday isn't basically a monster hit like that, where it's making $2 billion, even if it just makes $1 billion, it could still go down as one of the biggest financial failures in Marvel history, as well as one of the biggest financial failures just in movie history in general. And right now, with the enthusiasm for Marvel movies, even for their well-received ones, it's looking more and more like that might actually be the case for it. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think Avengers Doomsday and the return of Robert Downey Jr. is going to be enough to bring audiences back, or do you think the audience is long gone? Comment below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you can, hit the like button and share the video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.